Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're seeing this, everyone. Welcome back to The Common Cause with me, Luca,
Samson.
and Samson. And you may see that today we're discussing a nation in flames, and especially what's what's going on in Belfast, and the case of Henry Nowak, which has come to light recently with the release of the body cam footage. But first, before we delve into that, we will have a question time as we always do. And this time we actually didn't have a traditional comment. We had a DM
Yeah,
on
DM on
Instagram.
our Instagram. For those of you who aren't aware, we do have an Instagram account. It's common.cause.podcast. Link in the description and in the bio of our YouTube channel, as well as our Spotify channel. So do go ahead and leave us a follow on Instagram. You will see all the up-to-date information on when our episodes release, as well as we're thinking perhaps more on this later today, depending on when you view this upload. We're thinking of launching some short form content, so shorts, reels, that kind of thing, clips from our episodes. All very exciting prospects for the Common Cause podcast, so be the first to hear about it. Check us out on Instagram.
So, the first question: which British politician do you think receives or has received the most unfair criticism? So I'll start by asking that to you.
And this is past or present, yeah?
Yeah, we'll go for past or present. I mean, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll do you one for past and I'll do you one for present, okay?
Yeah.
So I'll start off with past. Luca might know who I'm going to say here. My personal favourite politician, Harold Macmillan. He was a Tory Prime Minister from around the end of the Suez Crisis, so the end of the 1950s, to around halfway through the 1960s. He was nicknamed Super Mac, originally by a comic book that was trying to discredit him and his abilities to govern, but the name actually became a positive nickname, obviously comparing him to Superman, the comic that released around the same time as he came to power. And basically, what makes Harold Macmillan so good, in my opinion, despite what people say about him, his economic growth, some would argue, was unsustainable. By the time he was on the way out, his growth had certainly seen its zenith, and it was starting to fall off. But look, for me, he is paternalism and what the Tory party really should try and be. Traditionally, the Tory party isn't as a hard right-wing party as perhaps some would argue Reform is. Rather, it is more in the centre of politics, and they would try and frame themselves as being more sensible. But I'll let you, the viewer, have your say on whether you think the Tory party is still a sensible party of governance or not. Harold Macmillan probably embodied that style of governance in his paternalism and the way that he ensured that it was a Tory party not just for the elites or for the businesses or for the lower tax brackets, but a Tory party for everyone. Championing the welfare state, he made key reforms to the NHS, kept the NHS going in its initially turbulent period, and that's my politician of the past. I always see on the internet when people are doing their rankings of British prime ministers, he's for some reason never as high as he should be. So that's why I feel he's unfairly judged. He doesn't get the recognition he deserves. As for the present, who is the most unfairly judged of our time at the moment? I mean, one Reform MP who I think was quite unfairly chucked out was James McMurdoch. Perhaps I'm being controversial when I said that because there was a prominent abuse case that came out against him, and that's of course, that's on him and whether you believe that those allegations were true or not, but also the fact that Reform UK can be partly held to blame to account for that because their vetting procedures for that election were famously not very rigorous. But James McMurdoch, I remember when he was elected, it was after about 4 or 5 recounts that the Labour Party was so determined on calling because they really did not want the prospect of a Reform candidate getting in an area where he wasn't expected to get in. He was a very last-minute candidate. But after all the recounts, he got in, and it was only by about 20 votes or so. So it was a very slim majority. And I remember when this happened because he actually launched a TikTok account around the same period, and what he would do on his TikTok is he would always keep his followers in check with what he was doing in Parliament, his work. He seemed a very down-to-earth politician who was always bearing in mind his constituents. It's not like the party politics you see in Westminster where politicians aren't really looking out for their constituents. They're rather trying to benefit their own political careers or to benefit their government or their shadow cabinet. But he just seemed a real genuine sort of politician. Obviously now he's being reassessed for that abuse case, that scandal that came out against him. But it took a real show of character for him to step down from the Reform Party. He now sits as an independent candidate. And yeah, I feel while some things he will be fairly judged for, and that's not for me to do, but for the law and the extent of the law to do. It would be unfair to judge him primarily on those actions and to discredit, the sort of grassroots campaign that he ran, which I think is an example for other members of Parliament to follow. So, Luca,
nice.
The question towards you now, past or present, or if you want to do what I did and do both.
I'll just keep it quick. Obviously, the easy answer for me is to say Nigel Farage, isn't it?
I suppose,
but I'm not going to do that, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers would say Nigel Farage as well. But I think actually Boris Johnson.
Yeah, that's actually
/ Rishi Sunak. It could be Rishi Sunak because Rishi Sunak, he came in, he actually delivered.
Not Liz Truss.
No, not Liz Truss, not yet. I mean, I still like Liz Truss, but everyone hates her now, but she's not too bad. With her podcast and stuff. Well, actually, like us, but no, I would say Boris Johnson because of the Partygate. Who cares about Partygate? I mean, not me. Everyone had parties in lockdown. Boris Johnson had a party. I mean, I suppose it's different because he was setting the rules. But the thing is, look at what Keir Starmer's doing. He's with the Mandelson, which is all the scandals he's been involved in with his free glasses and his free Arsenal tickets and Taylor Swift concerts. And you've got Boris Johnson who had a party. Oh yeah, and you're being looked at and judged for that for the rest of your life. So that's why I would say Boris Johnson.
Yeah, I would say Boris Johnson definitely. He was good when he started out, and then as usually happens with all politicians, that the honeymoon period ends and suddenly it's a big old crash and burn. Unfortunately, Boris will probably always be remembered for the Partygate scandal, and that will always have a negative impact on how he handled the pandemic. I personally don't agree with many ways he handled the pandemic. I think the extent of the lockdowns were incredibly harsh, and perhaps following some of the Scandinavian models in herd immunity would have been a more appropriate thing for us to do in Britain. Nevertheless, for Boris Johnson to be judged so harshly for the Partygate scandal, when you've got a current Prime Minister who is involved in numerous scandals, accepting gifts, glasses. Really, do we buy that? What else has he been accepting?
Well, he didn't buy that.
What else? He didn't buy that. What else has he been accepting? You've got the whole Mandelson situation, which we, the British public, are supposed to believe that he wasn't fully aware of, and then he's going to throw his civil servants under the bus and expect them to take the hit for it. I mean, there's a real lack of spine there as a leader. You've got to put yourself on the line sometimes and take responsibility. You're the Prime Minister of the country. In your capacity as Prime Minister, you need to be able to be honest, put your hands up and say when things go wrong. Rishi Sunak, I think he did do that.
We said sorry.
He did do that by calling the election when he did. Had he perhaps...
He shouldn't have called it that.
Had he perhaps let it go on for any longer, he would have been doing a disservice to himself and to his nation. The people were restless and they were desperate for an election to have their mandate be pushed forward. But that is an honest quality for him to do. I mean, was he quite so honest during the aftermath of the Partygate scandal when he sort of threw Boris Johnson under the bus to launch his own leadership campaign? Probably not, but that's the way Westminster politics goes at the end of the day.
God, I just had a thought. Remember Matt Hancock? I'm just remembering all the COVID politicians now.
All the COVID
remember
politicians.
Like the kissing.
He was on I'm a Celebrity and stuff. Nigel was on I'm a Celeb as well.
Oh, that's funny.
He'll be next.
I reckon
Boris will be on I'm a Celeb soon.
Wasn't his dad on it?
His dad was, yeah.
So they've all done it anyway.
His dad looks just like him. Anyway.
And his brother.
We digress. That was the
That was meant to be question time.
That was the only question
statement time is what we should call it.
Yeah, statement time. That was the only question we received last week. So we received lots of positive feedback as well on our most recent episode about Magnifica Humanitas. So we'd like to extend a grateful hand of thank you for that, for the feedback. Keep the support coming. Please, please, please keep the comments coming. We want to ensure this is a podcast that is between us and you, our viewership. And yeah, without further ado, I think we're happy now to move on to the main body of our episode, that being the rise of tensions across the country following the stabbing of Henry Nowak. Thank you.
A house divided against itself cannot stand. Now, these are the words, not by Martin Luther King, but by Abraham Lincoln, one of the great presidents of the United States of America. Now, in December, I'll ask you to explain this, but is this country divided against itself? I think so. We have people turned against each other, protests in the streets. But why is this? We will now delve into the horrifying murder of Henry Nowak. And if you would just like to explain the events that happened in December.
Well, yes, so December last year, Henry Nowak was heading home. Well, not heading home, heading back to his university accommodation. He'd been out for a few drinks with his mates and got into an encounter with who is now understood to be the killer on the streets. They had a verbal encounter, some words were exchanged, by which point the killer unsheathed an 8-inch blade. Bear in mind, this killer is a Sikh gentleman. The Sikhs, one of the tenets of their faith is that they should always carry a blade on them. However, this blade is not by any means 8 inches in length. I've actually seen, I used to know a Sikh guy, and he used to show like how he tied his turban and stuff, but his ceremonial blade was only about that big. This is an 8-inch blade we're talking about. That's like about that big, and he stabbed Henry Nowak, and he, alongside his brother, upon realizing the extent of the injuries they had carried on to Henry Nowak, they opted to call 999 and tell them that they were acting in self-defense against a racial attack. The police were dispatched, and what do you know? They took those two blokes for their word. And as Henry Nowak was choking in a pool of his own blood on the ground, he was told his rights, handcuffed, formally arrested before passing away. The body cam footage was released only a couple weeks ago, and there has been quite some fury online, mainly as a result of Nigel Farage, who told the British public to act in response to this matter with a cold rage. What do you think, Luca? Is what we're seeing the appropriate amount of cold rage, or?
Well, look, there's some people who disagree with this. I don't know again, we've not spoken about this until the podcast, but a cold rage. Wouldn't you be angry if your son or your daughter was out on the streets and was murdered, and the police, instead of finding out what happened, just took someone's word for it? Not the guy who was dying on the floor, but the guy who just stabbed someone and said, look, I stabbed him. He was racist to me. So they go, oh yeah, great. He is stabbed, but we will arrest him. I am. Why should we not be angry about that? I'm angry about that. That could have been me. That could have been someone I know. And if it carries on like this, it could have been someone we know. Now, I don't think Nigel Farage was trying to inflict riots and violence in a violent way. But I think he's saying we should be angry, and I do agree with that, because it's a disgusting thing. That the body cam footage is just disgusting, and it does make me angry. What do you think?
I agree. I think that the British public have every right to have some extent of fury over this killing, namely because it exposes the hypocrisy of the police force in this country. What was once a buzzword thrown around in Parliament to try and undermine Keir Starmer's leadership, this idea of two-tier policing, has now reared its ugly head, and we as the British public understand firsthand. All you have to do is take a look at that body cam footage to realise that they didn't even check the injuries on Henry Nowak. All they thought is he sustained some kind of cut to his face. They didn't realise he was stabbed and bleeding out in front of them. And rather than try and address his concerns as he pleaded with them, I've been stabbed, they said, don't think you have, mate. Whack the handcuffs on him, and what do you know? He died shortly afterwards. This is a tragedy, a British tragedy, and we as the public are going to be taken for fools in this next couple of weeks and expected to just forget about this as some other crisis or some other scandal comes up in government, and that diverts our attention instead. Now, does that mean I support going out and burning stuff down in the streets? No, it doesn't. But we'll address the riots when we move on to what happened in Belfast earlier this week, and
Still going on.
we focus in on that. It's still happening to this moment. I mean, there could be developments in the next couple of days that happen after we record this episode, which we won't obviously be able to comment on. Nevertheless, though, the British public has got a right to be angry about this. Henry Nowak's father gave that impassioned speech outside the court where he said this shouldn't be something that is used for political motives or political gain, and I can see where he's coming from. This is going to be something, as seen probably with Nigel Farage's speech, that is going to be used for some element of political capital. But this is an issue that's beyond politics, frankly. To have a young boy stabbed like that out in the streets, and then for his concerns not to be addressed, for him to instead be handcuffed and allowed to die like that, that is incredibly saddening and just a real testament to how far down this country has gone.
I mean, it is two-tier policing. These police officers are too worried about. We have police officers too worried about the guy who's been apparently someone's been racist to him. They're more worried about him than the man lying on the floor, because I suppose they're scared about being called racist if they attack the guy. One or two, yeah, I think it's that. But it's two-tier, and it's definitely written in the rules of the police. We see it through DEI in the workplace. We see it on the streets with police. And you know what? It does just feel like the British public are being put second, and it can definitely make you angry. We shouldn't forget about this. We will be told, oh, just leave it. The family said we don't really want to speak about it. It's what Keir Starmer's trying to do, but we can't, and we can't forget this.
I mean, let's reverse the roles. Let's say this was a young white boy who stabbed a Sikh boy on the way back from a function, and he was on the ground, and then the white fella tried to call the police and tell them, oh, I've been racially attacked, and this guy needs to be arrested. They came, and there's a guy dying on the ground in a pool of his own blood, telling the police that he's been stabbed. Would the situation be any different? I think I know the answer to that.
Well,
I think
it happened 5 years.
Luca knows the answer to that, and I think you, the viewership, know the answer to that. Of course, it would be a different situation. So, what is it in the police force? What is it that they're doing differently for certain groups of people and certain other groups of people? And why is it that it's this way? Is this some sort of deep lying conspiracy theory, or is this just a genuine fear, a fear that shouldn't be allowed in the British establishment, but is there anyway, a fear of being called racist, or a fear of being called politically incorrect, or a fear of being told that your views are outdated and not fit for the 21st century? I think stuff like that is so superficial, and it's just boring. It is boring to read about. I'm fed up of reading about cases like this where police are acting differently for some people as they are for another group of people. And I just think the British public are just as fed up with it. How can you expect to go out and tell the British public, we need to let this go now. Justice has been served. He was locked up. His brother was locked up. Even the mother was locked up for her role in hiding the murder weapon. And that's it. It's swept under the rug. Serious change needs to be done to the police force. We need to have a look at what is going on, what is entrenched in the code of the police that makes them act differently towards other people. Is it an institutional thing, or is it an individual issue where individual police officers are acting upon their own judgment, which is an entirely different thing, an entirely different issue? If you've got police officers who don't act towards the interests of the British public and instead act to their own interests, are they even fit to be in the police force? These are all questions which the case of Henry Nowak is unfortunately raised, but I'm happy that they've been raised sooner rather than later, and I hope that within the next few years we can see some meaningful change made before more lives are lost and more British people are becoming angrier and angrier to the point where you've got riots out in the streets and people burning stuff and throwing things at the police force. No Western society can call itself, a proud democracy if that is the result of of the government being unable to address concerns. It is just a real failure on every aspect of British society.
I mean, yeah, but look what happened 6 years ago with George Floyd. It was a bit of a different situation, I suppose, but within a week, every politician was taking a knee. Every police officer, even the police at protests, were taking a knee. And it does feel a bit hypocritical that these people who went out for BLM and protested, they were able to think like this for years. They were able to be angry, but when it comes to us, when it's on our side, no one kneels, no one cares. We're just expected to get on with it and don't protest and don't be angry. And I'm not saying we should be violent, but it does. There's definitely double standards in this country, and I think it's very very sad.
I also think that what this event, this incident has done, unfortunately, is a real discredit to the Sikh community. And I'm sure they're going to be targeted. They already have quite relentlessly online and in person over what has occurred. And I mean, there's now calls from, I think Zia Youssef was one such politician who called for the actual banning of these ceremonial blades.
What do you
That
think about that?
What do I think? I think that would be a step too far. Okay, the Sikh community have been integrated for the most part into British society. We had that whole debate last week during our question time about what it means to be British and what does the flag mean and how do people identify with the flag. And I think the Sikh community are one such example of a group of decent, hard-working people who would identify themselves as being British and they would claim the British flag as their own. And I don't think that there are many incidents with the Sikh community. This wasn't a ceremony, like I clarified earlier. This wasn't a ceremonial blade that was used by the perpetrator of this crime. It was an 8-inch knife that was then attempted to be covered up by saying, "Oh, it's a ceremonial blade." And then as soon as someone does some reading into it and says, "Hang on a minute, I don't think it is," I saw a TikTok of a Sikh gentleman, his girlfriend was recording him in the car, and he was going on an impassioned debate about how this is such a discredit to his community and how can this person even try and claim that it was a ceremonial blade and all this kind of stuff. And I agree with that gentleman on TikTok. I think it is a real disservice to, we have such ethnic violence in this country where the immigration debate has been allowed to reach such a fiery head and riots, and you had the Southport riots a couple of years ago, and now you've got the riots in Belfast, which I suppose are just the continuation of this pattern where something happens which is involving some form of ethnic minority in this country, and then the blame game starts, and then you've got people pointing the finger, and then next thing you know you've got a government who isn't willing to crack down on anything. They're happy to let people go at each other's necks because it's convenient for them. It makes things easier for them. I think the real honest thing to do in this situation for the Sikh community would be for politicians in the government to come out and to offer them an apology for what's happened, because there's been some real damage done to the trust in our society between like interfaith dialogue and that sort of thing. It's a real disservice to their community, and it's also quite saddening to see.
But I just want to debate that bit really. If we're talking about two-tier policing, what's to say that one group of people being able to have blades on the street and everyone else not being able to isn't two-tier as well? I know it's sort of religious.
It's a tenet of their faith. I mean, it's the same. I suppose some would argue it's the same as the burqa debate, but I would push back against that, and I'd say it's not unlike the burqa. It would be like saying let's ban the hijab entirely, which I don't think Britain would ever do. I mean, I don't even think they'd even ban the burqa. I don't think they'd go that far, as some of the countries on the continent have done. But look, the way I see it is that we're a country that is entrenched in the common law. So the way you apply the law is the way it has been applied over decades, and you look to previous cases to use that as an example. And I think you'd struggle to find examples of members of the Sikh community using these ceremonial blades in a way that is genuinely harmful and causing harm on others. It would then be a disservice to this case to say, well, because he's carried this blade as a result of his faith, that should be a ban imposed on the entire Sikh community. It's like when you've got a kid talking in the back of class and the teacher says, let's keep everyone behind. You shouldn't punish the collective for the actions of the few. Rather, we should have a justice system that is genuinely fair and genuinely cracks down on those who do commit the crimes. That's what I think on it.
But suppose it's, yeah, I've not really made my mind up yet. I'm just sort of trying to put
Trying to
something
figure out where you
together.
stand. I mean, I can see the
Do you
argument
see what I mean?
for
Like a
banning these
burkas.
ceremonial blades because, I mean, if you're allowing this to happen, what's saying that something like this won't happen in a few years' time with one of those ceremonial blades? If that did happen, then perhaps I'd be more open to having a debate in Parliament about that and approaching the views of both aspects and trying to reach a conclusion.
But why do you think the burqa should be banned?
Why do I think the burqa should be banned? Because, well, you don't know who's under that burqa. It could be literally anyone. There's examples of, there's a song that came out of Afghanistan when the Taliban took power over 20 years ago. And it's a song about the burqa, and it's saying, my mother wears a burqa, my sister wears one too, my uncle wears a burqa, the burqa it is blue. And what that song is essentially trying to say is the burqa is a tool that is often used to suppress women. You'll have these Muslim women come out, and maybe I'm unfit to comment on this, but I'm going to give my opinion anyway. These women who come out and say that head coverings like the burqa is empowering to them because it's part of their faith. But I would push back on that and ask the question of, well, look in countries like Afghanistan and Iran, where it's compulsory that you wear these head coverings. What's empowering about that sort of authority telling you what you're allowed to wear and what you must wear? I don't think the burqa is empowering in that sense. And as that song which I brought up earlier suggests, it could quite literally be anyone under that burqa. I mean, I'm not going to go completely far and say it would be terrorist criminals under there, but you can see why that argument might be made, and you can also see why it's the same as if you go into a shop wearing a ski mask. Rightfully, people are going to think, is he gonna rob the place?
But if someone walks into a shop with a knife, you think they're gonna rob the place or stab someone.
But, but they don't go in with the knife in their hand, do they? That's not what the Sikhs are doing. The Sikhs wear their ceremonial blades in a concealed manner.
So your argument with the burqa is we don't really know who's under the burqa. But if we have a group of people carrying knives, we don't know which ones are murderers and going to use it. Now, I've not made my decision, but
I mean, it's very rare that you'll have a group of people carrying knives without that sort of hateful intent. I mean, knife crimes in this country are so prevalent at the moment, and it seems every other week you've got something in the news about a knife crime being committed. So rather than putting a ban on a certain community, so a certain faith, saying you're not allowed to carry these ceremonial knives, why don't we actually start cracking down on knife laws in general? I mean, you'll look now online and they've got these blades that have had the top cut off, so there's no point on them. That's not really doing anything, is it? If you want to do something meaningful with knife crimes, let's get these machetes off the streets. Let's get these huge kitchen knives that any Joe can go in and buy off the streets. And that's how you crack down on it, not by going in on this one community, this one group of people and saying you're not allowed to carry these ceremonial blades. Meanwhile, you'll still have other groups of people going out and, regardless of their faith, carrying these huge blades. Maybe you see the argument there.
Yeah, I see the point. Let's move on. Let's move on now.
Yeah, this wasn't...
You're gone.
Sorry, you can go.
I was just going to say, do you think this will affect what's going to happen in Makerfield? Because I suppose, in the past couple of years, it's all been about immigration. But with Greens on the rise, people have said, actually, immigration is scapegoated a bit and people are shifting towards more an economic approach and things. But with what's happened in Belfast as well, do you think that the focus of the British people is going to come back into immigration a bit? Because I think it's still a big issue, but it's sort of gone a bit out of the spotlight for a bit.
I mean, it is still a big issue. You'll often hear Nigel Farage saying, and all these polls that he seems to have organised, it is remarkable the way that man organises polls. I think once he finishes politics, he should go found his own polling organisation because he does such a good job at going on about polls. The biggest issue to the British public, according to polls, is immigration. So I think immigration will always be on the minds of those going to the ballot box. It's probably the reason why Reform have done so well in local elections that don't really have an impact on immigration policies. I think regardless of what happened with Henry Nowak or what happened in Belfast, the people of Makerfield would have had immigration in mind. But then again, Andy Burnham, who is probably the favourite to win this by-election, He's
Definitely.
actually taking quite a hard line on immigration by following the Labour Party's supposed policies as proposed by their Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who you'll famously hear people like Jacob Rees-Mogg saying she might as well go join Reform. She's that extreme in her immigration policy. So when you've got parties which are supposedly for, pro-immigration or whatever, such as the Labour Party, going on and saying, we're actually going to take a hard line on it, that's showing the importance of this issue to the British public. And it's almost reassuring in a way to know that the government does listen to something. Do they have the goal to then act on that something? I mean, we know the Labour government at the moment definitely don't.
I mean, hopefully Andy Burnham doesn't win. He's literally just using it for a stepping stone.
It's a real shame for the people of
realise
Makerfield. They're being taken for mugs, but we'll see at the ballot box.
I think they'll wake
what
up.
happens.
They'll realise. He's obviously the favourite, but I think Rob Kenyon could just get it.
He could.
But Restore actually.
They are
split the
they
vote
are
a little
splitting
bit.
the vote.
I think they're 8% now.
Yeah.
Which maybe without Restore Reform win, but
we'll find out on the day, and
week,
be sure to keep an eye out, because we will, if we do end up making short form content or whatever, we'll be sure to make a reel or maybe even a live stream, as Luca hinted at, on the Makerfield election, covering what's happening. So the next logical step in this episode would be to move from Henry Nowak to, as we've alluded to multiple times, Belfast. So I gave the account on what happened with Henry Nowak. Would you like to give the account on what happened in Belfast?
Yeah, I can do that. So I don't actually know the attempted murderer's name because it's a bit more recent. I've not really done
I don't even think they've released his name, to be honest. They took so long to release his nationality.
Yeah,
so there was rumours that he was Somalian,
Sudan.
But now we figured out that he's actually Sudanese. We know his age. He was 30 years old, and I mean, you've seen the footage. Would you like to say what happened?
But maybe we can show the footage here.
I don't think we can show the footage on this. If I am able to show a much watered down version that doesn't get this episode flagged for anything, then I'll endeavour to do my best. But
so basically, I don't think there's any other way to put it than a man from Sudan and an illegal immigrant who, they didn't want to disclose that, did they, or where he was from, but an illegal immigrant who came to to Ireland a couple of years ago. Tried to behead a man in the street, and luckily there was a patriot, or just who knows what he thought, but he was brave, and he went in there and he got the guy off.
A bit like what happened at Bondi Beach in Australia.
Oh, where that Muslim actually tried to go and stop the gunners.
Yeah. He did more than attempt to behead him. He gouged one of his eyes out as well. He's the victim's currently in critical condition in the hospital.
Very sad.
We can only pray that he makes a swift and speedy recovery.
But just harrowing.
Yeah, this is just yet again another example of how the British public are being taken for fools. We've got someone who, I mean, the information is rapidly developing. If we are actually wrong about this, then we'll address it in a future episode, and that's for the futures issue. But we've got someone who supposedly came to Ireland illegally, and then he arrived in Dublin, managed to get over the border into Northern Ireland, and he was in Belfast, attempted to behead a man on the street. It is awful.
What the hell is going on?
It's absolutely awful. How have we got a condition in this country where men can go out on the street with these huge blades and literally attempt to behead someone? How can this be? What is going wrong in this country?
And there's still people who stand up for illegal immigration. How can anyone support illegal immigration? The best analogy I can say is, imagine you had 100 sweets in a jar, and let's say 5% of the sweets were poisonous. Would you let your child eat from the jar? No. So look, not every illegal immigrant is a murderer, but let's say 5%, maybe even more of them, are crazy people just here to get benefits, to get a nice 4-star hotel and iPhones, and they go out there and they stab people in the street, and you wouldn't give that jar to your child, so why are we letting them in here? Plus, there's homeless veterans on the streets who are just being sort of passed over. No, sorry, once again, two-tier, because we have DEI, we have two-tier policing, we have two-tier care for people. There's homeless people, they're veterans, they're British people, but then we have illegal immigrants who come here, some from safe countries. I mean, all from a safe country, actually. France is safe last time I checked. I mean, I wouldn't want to live there, but it's safe. And they're being put first over our own British citizens. So
I mean, it's like I've said earlier in this episode, once again, the British people are being taken for mugs. And I think as a nation, we have a tendency to be quite trusting in how we do things. But trust can only go so far, and that trust is eventually broken. And at what point is the trust in illegal immigration broken? At what point does the government finally say we need to crack down, we need to get a hold of who's coming into this country, we need to know names, dates of birth, identities, where you've come from, criminal records? If you can't do that, well, it's a simple fix. You stop them coming in the first place. Why is it that the nation is getting this wrong, and why is it that we're so incapable of having any real action on this? I mean, it's embarrassing. I wonder if the world looks towards Britain and they laugh at us because we're just so incapable of doing some things. And where does this incapability come from? It is entrenched in our society.
What do I even say? What do I even say to this? I mean, we should have zero illegal immigration. And you said that the Home Secretary is quite right wing. But what's she done? She's hired like A level. You need A level English. Now that's good, but we're saying she's got reform level policies. She's not done anything, and they will lie and show you fake. Well, they will show you figures about net immigration has decreased and all this nonsense. Just don't believe that. Look at the real figures. Look at the increase in illegal immigrants coming into the country, and all of that needs to be stopped. So yeah, I just cut off then because we had some technical difficulties.
As always,
we're being censored by the state. But don't believe what you see, and look at the real figures and research them for yourselves before you believe anything the media tell you. I think. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to leave comments, and thanks very much again for your support. Maybe by the next episode, England will have won a World Cup match.
Yeah, fingers crossed. The World Cup's on now. Get your flags out. Get involved. Support your team, whether it's England or whether you're one of those like Scotland or Wales fans who actually live in England. We know who you are. We know who you are. Okay. So yeah, enjoy the episode. Let us know what you think. Leave your comments down below. And with that, yeah, stay safe. This is Common Cause signing off. Thank you.